What's up, guys? This is Mike Parker at the Center for OCD and Anxiety in Pittsburgh, PA, and this is OCD Space, where we talk about all things OCD. Now, I know we've got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of you out there struggling, a lot of you struggling with really bad false OCD beliefs that are really keeping you down. I know there's people that are good moral people who have been convinced by their OCD that they're a bad person. We got people that are competent, who are successful, who are believing that they're incompetent because of their OCD. And guys, the good news is this stuff is all treatable. You don't have to live under the tyranny of these beliefs anymore. And so today we got another great concept to share with you all. It is called the OCD Bubble. And this is something that's just a core part of the OCD experience to really understand. And this is going to help you all, I'm sure. Now, guys, if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe below, and let's get started. Okay, guys, what is this thing called the OCD bubble? Well, like I said, this is a really important concept. It's something that's core to that OCD experience. And what it is this is that place, that mental state of confusion, you might say, that you get into when you have OCD. And this is at those times where you are fully convinced of that belief, fully convinced of that obsession that you have. You know, perhaps it's the room's contaminated, or that you're really at some point during the day going to run into the bathroom and grab those pills and overdose because you just can't control yourself and you worry that you want to hurt yourself. Whatever that OCD belief is that scares you, that disturbs you, when you're in the OCD bubble, you're fully convinced of it. You fully believe it. And so you're fully immersed and absorbed in your obsession. And it's a place that we call the bubble because you'll notice in those moments that nobody else seems to see what you're seeing. Nobody else seems to believe what you're saying. And that's because you're having an experience in that bubble that is so convincing and so real, and yet no one else is having that same experience. And so it's important to understand how this works, how it happens, and how this impacts you. The important thing, and the thing I find really helpful about this concept of the OCD bubble, is it explains why. It explains to you why you do these repetitive compulsions. It explains to you why you do the avoidance that you do, because when you are in the bubble, it does feel completely real. It is so hard to shake the belief of what is going on according to the OCD. That it makes total sense that you start taking these extreme actions as a response to that. And so I like that, right? Because then we're not saying, oh, why are you doing all this weird stuff? Why are you repetitively doing this behavior? Why won't you stop washing your hands? Why won't you stop arguing with your thoughts? It's because you do become convinced. And the reality is that if anybody was convinced of what you become convinced of, everybody would be doing all these extreme behaviors too. And so we don't focus so much on, look how irrational these behaviors are. We actually say, well, the behaviors make sense. Let's figure out how you got into the OCD bubble and became convinced of this horrible thing that anybody would think is horrible, right? That's where we shift the focus to when we understand the OCD bubble. So let's talk about how you get into this situation. This is part of this OCD experience. It's a part of the daily experience of living with OCD. And how it works is you're starting from a place of not trusting yourself. This is something I've talked a lot about on this channel, guys. When you have OCD, you don't trust yourself. That's the core issue. And it's in very specific areas. So when you think about your obsession, whatever it might be, perhaps you have been worrying that you are going to hit a pedestrian with your car, or may have hit a pedestrian with your car every time you go out, and it's causing you to drive back and check your route, make sure it didn't happen. This is basically you not trusting your memory, not trusting your senses. And so you start from that place of not trusting yourself, in that one specific area, and you trust yourself in others, but in this one specific area you don't. And then what happens is, because of that lack in trust, you engage in a very specific process, a very specific thought process, you could say. And what that thought process involves is not utilizing your senses. You don't trust yourself. And so you don't trust yourself to receive information and process information and come to conclusions. And so all that stuff sort of drops off of your experience. And so when you're driving, you are not trusting that what you remember happened on that drive is accurate. You are not trusting that the fact that you didn't see anything or hear anything is to be trusted. It's all things that you just ignore. You ignore your sensory information. And what you do instead is you go into your imagination completely. And then you do all of your reasoning from this place in your head, trying to think of what ifs. I know that I don't remember hitting anybody, but what if I forgot that it happened, or what if I didn't notice it happened? And this is how OCD works. You're in your imagination doing your reasoning, and anything that is in reality with your senses is not trusted and is basically ignored or rejected. And so that's the thought process you get into. And when you're in your imagination, anything's possible. And this really extreme possibility suddenly feels very likely. You suddenly become convinced that it is probably likely that I did hit someone on my drive. That's how extreme the reasoning in your imagination goes. And then what happens at that point? You become convinced, and then you are in the bubble, guys. That's when you're there. You believe that you probably hit someone, and you have to go back and check, because it's the belief in your head is so solid, so convincing, so unshakable that you have to do something about it. And of course, you got to work, and you don't remember hitting anybody, but you have to get back in the car and drive back and make sure. And so when you're doing all those behaviors, you're in that bubble. Okay, so that's how it works. That's how you get yourself into it. And that, of course, leads to the question of, how do you deal with the situation? What tips do I have for you guys as far as how to manage this, maybe not even get into the bubble as much? Well, there's a lot of things you can do, but I'm gonna stick with one idea right today, which is a metaphor. I find it very helpful to think of the OCD bubble as the experience of being in a movie. And so when you think about it, when you go to a movie, of course this is not something that's happening in reality in your life, and yet you get fully absorbed into that movie. So, if you're watching a sad movie, you're watching The Notebook and you're crying. Guys, I know you're crying too. I've never seen The Notebook, but apparently that's a sad movie. That's going to make you cry. If you're going to a Final Destination movie, or another horror movie, Scream, whatever it might be, you're going to be hitting those jump scares, and you're going to be like having that crazy jump in your chest from your heart, and you're going to feel scared, and yet none of it is actually happening in reality. This is the incredible power of the imagination. The people who created that movie know how to manipulate your imagination, know how to manipulate your emotions to make you feel real things, even though it's only happening on a screen. And so OCD is so similar. When you go into your imagination and you start doing your reasoning, you are literally experiencing a movie in your head. You start to imagine things. You start to experience these what ifs as if they are real. You have real emotions that come with it. You have real sensory experiences as you're imagining things. And so that part of the OCD experience that happens in your imagination takes over and makes you truly believe that this is what is happening. And yet, think about it, guys. If you're in that movie, Let's say you're watching a movie about aliens attacking Earth or something like that. You don't walk out of that movie theater believing the aliens are still attacking. The movie ends, and then you're done with the movie and you're back to life, boring old life where there aren't aliens attacking, unfortunately. But you're able to make that disconnect, and that's what I suggest you start to do with that OCD bubble. Is even though it is so believable, even though it feels so real, it's okay to start to take that step that this is the OCD bubble, and that is exactly what my OCD is capable of making me feel. It's capable of giving me this real feeling experience, and yet I don't have to actually believe it just because it feels so real. I can start to realize this is the power of the imagination. This is the amazing power of the human mind and the human body to make us have these experiences like this. And so this is the OCD movie, and I don't have to believe it's actually happening, even though it's making me think and feel and experience all these things. Okay, guys, so that's my advice for today. That is the OCD bubble, a really important concept for understanding why you do what you do when you have OCD, and also just, as far as like managing it, starting to realize it's just a movie happening in your head. This is the OCD story, this is the OCD movie. I hope this has been helpful, guys, and until next time, take care, and don't forget, trust yourselves.